Christmas 2022. We're heading off up to Rockhampton on Monday. Today's Saturday, New Year's Eve. Any big trip that I do, I like to pull the wheels and discs off the boat, remove the wheel bearings, clean them all up, check that they're okay, repack them with grease, put them back on, and I have that peace of mind when I'm travelling up the highway that I'm not going to be one of those guys on the side of the road with a wheel off. So I'll go outside now, jack the trailer up, pull the wheels and discs off, bring them inside for cleaning. For anyone wanting to know how to get the discs and calipers off, I'll just show you on this first disc. These calipers have an 18 bolt, standard is 17 or 19, and Imperial 11/16, or 3/4. And then give it a good soaking. Back at home when I clean the trailer, just pads still look pretty good, plenty of meat on there. Get this cap off, just give it a tap, don't hit it too hard, you don't want to buckle it or bend it, because this is all that seals the water out from your bearings. So off that comes, all nice and clean, clearly no signs of water have been in there. Just get that, little bend out of the way, straighten that split pin, heavy duty trailer of this to carry a boat of this size. Starting to get a bit here within this minutes. It's always recommended to put new split pins in. I don't have any, so I just look after the split pin. That can go back in, there's no problems with that. These will never be tight. When you put them on and preload them, you don't over tighten them, you just preload them up and back them off. And I'll just take it comes. So you can see no water's been in there, water around the outside. You can see a little bit of rust starting to creep in around there, so it's time to give it a good clean up and repack it, and it'll be good for the trip up to Yeppoon, which is about 660 kilometres from my home here in Brisbane. Okay, so I've got all 4 discs off, and the way I lay them out, that one there is left front, left rear, right front. Always keep the bearings together. Left front disc, left front bearings. The cones that are in here match those bearings and have been worn in accordance with each other. As it turns out, none of these bearings needed repacking. They're all clean. None of them had any water getting in, so they're all good, which is what you want to see. After you've pulled your first or the second one out and they're perfect, don't ever be tempted to stop there and not worry about the other tube or the other wheels, because it only takes one to ruin your holiday or ruin your trip. And I'd much rather be doing this here than on the side of a highway somewhere. I use petrol to clean the grease out, grease being a petroleum product, and petrol also will evaporate very quickly, so you've got no contaminants left in there. Now, while I'm showing you this, and these bearings are about maybe 14 months old, so I was expecting them to be perfect, and they are. And if you have a look here, you can't see any burn marks. Normally you'll see some brown staining on each of those needle rollers. These are like new, so nothing wrong with these. Now the important thing that you need to see here, when you have your shell still in your disc like that, you need to get that shell out. So the way that you do it is you have to knock this bearing out from the other side. And when you bring your punch down to knock it out, it needs to sit on that surface there. As soon as your drift hits here, you're damaging the bearing. Tap it around here and your bearing's safe. Okay, so how do you get that shell out? There's a disc, that's the shell that I want to get out. I never ever tap around there to lift that shell. You'll damage the shell. So you flip the disc over, put your drift in into the middle, just lift it up until you can feel that edge. Give that a little tap. That's it. So where I just tapped then, there's the cone of the bearing. I tapped here and here. So again, missing that shell of the bearing, hitting that steel part that I just showed. I could actually just repack these bearings. I don't need to clean this old grease out and pack them. But I guess I don't like to do things by halves, so if I've gone to all this trouble, it's not, an extra 15 minutes to clean bearings. Don't see the point. Once it's clean, you should be able to see daylight through between those rollers. I'm not sure how well that comes out on the camera, but that means you've got all the grease out. The important thing is when you repack the grease that you pack grease in there until it comes out this end, and I'll show you that. So we take some marine grease out of the pot here, and just wipe a little bit into that opening, and on the heel of your hand just press it in. Another piece, keep pressing it in, so that's actually pushing up into that space, just like that. You can see it's starting to come out the top now because I'm pressing it into those gaps. You can see how that's starting to come through. Take another little bit, press it into the underside there, keep pressing, just keep wiping it backwards and forwards like that, pick it up, put it down, and you can see it pushing through that air gap that we were talking about before, those gaps. The grease is coming all the way through there, so you know that those needle rollers have grease going through from the back side to the front side. Just keep going all the way around, keep pushing that grease. You can see it coming through the gaps there. See that all coming out like worms coming through the holes. Keep doing that until you've gone all the way around. And once you've gone all the way around, you can see my hand's empty of grease now because all the grease is inside that bearing. So then what I do, just grease up the outside of that bearing, all those needle rollers, and we'll cover, rotate. Now, take grease, put it on that inner cone, and don't forget, each of these bearings when I cleaned them, I kept them with the disc, so I know that this bearing came out of that cone because they all sat there. So I then just grease up that cone, get plenty of liberal coating of grease on it. And I usually put a little bit of grease on the inside. I don't actually think it does anything because it really just spins around inside there. Probably just makes you feel a bit better that get plenty of grease in there. Once that's all in, nice and carefully, make sure your needle rollers are all greased. Just place that in there. Next comes this big ugly shell, a bit tighter fit. So next, back the front bearing, grab a whack of that grease again. See it coming through there. The good thing about doing it yourself is you know it's done properly. You know the bearings have been washed properly, you've personally inspected them, and you've packed that grease and made sure that it's gone right through. Then in a couple of days when we're driving up the Bruce Highway for 8 or 9 hours, we know we have peace of mind. We're not going to have any wheel bearing problems on our trailer. So that's packed. Grease around the outside. Any grease on there. Freeze that cone up. So, how to get the disc on? Reload the bearings. Disc on. Bearing. Outer bearing. And wash it. There's a loaded nut. Just keep an eye on where that hole is. There's a good axles. They've got 2 holes. So you've got 2 choices there as to where your split pin's going to go. Just give it a little rotate to get those bearings to bed into their outer cones. And then I've got 1 hole there. You can try with my split pin. Right there, and 1 there. So what you actually need to do, so it's gone past the hole, and then I bring it back to the hole. That has preload on the bearing. Out of the split. Okay. Pull that up. Bring that over. Now our cap. Just make sure that that's nice and clean, no sharp edges and no muck, because we don't want dust and dirt going in there on that grease. That just sits on there. I'm going to give that a nice tap. If we don't force these cactus, because after all, this cap on the outer bearing is the only thing stopping seawater getting into that bearing when you're at the boat ramp and your trailer is underwater. Okay, that's that. Now when your caliper goes on, so what I'll do is just put the caliper on. Because these bolts spend a bit of the time in and out of salt water, I like just to put a bit of grease on the thread. Here. And just push that back a little bit. The piston, it'll push the fluid back out of it, so the piston is far enough back. Give that a little nip. Doesn't want to be too tight. That's it. Done. Do the same for the other 3. So that's it. Job's done. Took about 3.5 hours. But I know that when we're driving up to Rockhampton, I won't have any problems. Don't have anything to worry about. Can just rest easy and just make the trip. So when we get out there in a couple of days' time, it'll just feel all that little bit more rewarding.